With Elation seeming to be another path that does shape up to be more restrictive to its own elements, by that I mean mainly just running mono Elation teams, I want to make a video talking about what I do personally hope for the path outside of that, just so the actual value of the path is more than just its own team. Personally, I think these points I'm going to bring up are going to be something that most people would want because it's generally going to be a win-win. So let's talk about it. Stuck grinding in Honkai Star Rail? Need Stellar Jades fast? We've got you covered. Head over to U7 Buy, your ultimate gaming hub for save fast and cheap in-game top-ups. Whether it's Star Rail or your other favorite games, U7 delivers instantly and players love it. Check out their Trustpilot reviews, they're actually top ranked. On the Honkai Star Rail direct top-up page, you can recharge your account in seconds. For example, 8080 Ononeric shards cost $99.99 in the official store, but on U7 Buy, you can see here it's way cheaper. Just pick your server, enter UID, pay securely, and boom, your account is instantly loaded. Want extra savings? Use code PRETSR at checkout for 5% off, perfect for last minute pulls, battle passes, or surprising a friend. And here's a bonus. If you spend $80 a month on U7 Buy, you can grab the Honkai Star Rail Express Pass for only 1 cent, which is nearly free. Click on the link in my description, recharge fast, save more, and keep blazing those trails. So as we know, Elation does have a big synergistic thing with each other because of how it works. Elation damage increases are of course going to come from Elation characters themselves. Punchline generation is only going to be the characters that do state that they gain punchline. And then Aha Instant especially itself, the way it is calculated to act quicker is based off Elation character speeds. So the less Elation characters you have in the team not only subtracts a whole Elation skill, which is potentially a big damage drop off just by missing that, Aha Instant also can act overall less, just because it's not going to have the total speed output as opposed to having 3 to 4 Elation characters. So with all that in mind, it's really clear that like, oh, it's going to be a path that is relatively limited to itself, similar to Remembrance, but honestly, I personally can say that this is a little worse if it does end up going this route, because of course they could end up changing it a bit where maybe it's not that big of a drop off that we think of. It's mainly all theory slash feels craft, since of course we only have 2 characters to really go off it right now and it's already looking bad just because of how much one character is going to want the other. In this case, it's going to be Sparksy wanting Yao Guang, and then you kind of look at the whole Elation formulas all together and then you kind of see, yeah, this is probably going to be the route it goes. The reason I say it's honestly more path restrictive as opposed to Remembrance is because the Remembrance, the whole thing with them is they actually do work with a lot of other supports. The Remembrance team itself does actually have substitutes. Of course, the drop-offs are big, and a lot of them are HP scalers, so they can't use attack buffs, but they still can utilize a lot of other things. Like they can utilize damage dealt, which is probably one of the biggest amp sources in this game. I feel like every support almost has some form of damage percentage buffs. Elation, on the other hand, straight up is just restricted to specific characters. The only ones that like fully utilize the buffs of characters is Tribi and Cypher. They're like the only ones that have perfect buffs slash debuffs that work completely with the Elation formula. But like with the Remembrance, they were at least able to utilize a lot of other supports. Again, the drop-offs are big, but when it comes to Elation specifically, a lot of these characters are just borderline unusable. Like, you're not going to use Sunday with them, while even with Remembrance, even Sunday specifically had some, like, anti-synergy with the whole, like, detonation playstyle. There were some setups that did work. In this case, it's generally just bad. Remembrance at least did have a good amount of substitutes, while Elation is going to be more restrictive on that front, since a lot of them are not really going to benefit from attack unless they have an attack conversion, like someone like Sparksy does, but Sparksy can straight up hit it, like, without support help. I mean, of course, support help helps you more because you can build more crit rate, crit damage, etc. But unless it's like an unlimited capping thing, which I highly doubt, it's going to be for the most part that any character that doesn't have that and has a different stat will make attack buffs useless, and that's going to be bad. Like Yao Guang, for an example, she can only really utilize speed buffs when it comes to increasing Elation. Like attack on her is completely worthless, and there's a lot of attack buffs in this game. Same thing again would go to like the HP scalers in general, but at least with them, that's like the whole like playstyle. For these characters, they're just like, hey, we just don't get attack. Lol, new formula, get screwed. So what I am personally hoping for these Elation teams, I think it's relatively inevitable to say that they are mostly going to be mono Elation teams. Maybe just a substitute of one, similar to how we didn't have a full Remembrance team. We had Tribi in there until Cyrene, then it became mono Remembrance fully. I think in this case, it's very safe to say that it's probably going to be the same thing, if not actually just full off the get-go. We'll have to see. But I do hope these characters generally do have potential outside of Elation characters themselves, because the whole thing is Elation skill that with the Aha Instant is the main form of damage. damage. That is going to be the most damage contributed between all of them. And so one of the biggest ways is to generate punchline when you're not generating punchline on a team. So just having characters that are not Elation pretty much is just going to be a nerf to them. Because that's inevitable, I do hope they go a route where maybe this won't be possible for DPS, but the characters would be best installed on the actual Elation team while also being good outside. A prime example of this is Hyacine. Hyacine was just regarded as just a godlike sustain because she just worked good everywhere. She healed you a lot. Depending on the team, I know a lot of people say like, oh, she does insane damage. The thing you gotta account for that is the fact that you really need AoE buffs. Like if you use Hyacine on a team where the buffs are single target to the DPS, Hyacine is not going to do damage. That's just kind of the nature of it. And with Elation, I feel like it's a bit different just because they have their own Elation formulas. So with Elation skills and all that, I feel like it can actually be generally different and they can contribute a lot more potentially. Even if you only see the Elation skill happen like once per cycle, that actual hit can do a lot, and then that's obviously not accounted for any time they may attack. So mainly this would go towards supports and sustains. The reason I say supports and sustains specifically is just because they do have a general role that can be achievable without needing to be fully on the team that they are made for. I mean, of course, when you look at characters that are made for a team that don't necessarily work outside of it, that are still buffers, it's a bit weird. Cyrene, as an example, outside of air teams and outside of Remembrance, her buffs for non-air or Remembrance characters are just like whatever. Just because it's just damaged up, but it also enables true damage, so it's like a little bit of leeway, but that's about it. I'm hoping they can at least go that route, but at least better, just so you can actually use these characters outside of it. So like a similar case would be like if Yao Guang had better buff potential, just so she had more variety outside of Elation, because obviously she's not best in slot in any other team. She can work in some teams, but like it's obviously never going to be the best. I feel like if they can go the route of that, but just slightly better buffs overall for characters that are not just Elation characters, because the things that do buff Elation characters are relatively good buffs like vulnerability, all-type rest pen, and then crit rate, crit damage that can go on the characters and do well outside of Elation teams. So I do hope they do make supports that emphasize on that to the point where you can actually use them outside of the teams, and maybe their Elation skill, even if it's not an attack for buffer specifically, maybe it's just like a good buff that can be universally good, such as energy related, speed related. Of course, that depends on the character and build, just so you can actually have more cases to use them. And that also would open up more opportunities for people that like the characters but don't really get into Elation, so they actually have a reason to pull them and use them on teams to, you know, have fun, and at least it's not like a big detriment to their actual pull value. Because of course, never are they going to be best in slot. There's never going to be an Elation support made for Elation that's going to be best in slot in non-Elation teams. I doubt it. I'm 99% sure that's not going to happen, but in a case that can at least make it to where they can function as a solid substitute, to the point where it's not generally just like full on detrimental, since the buffs that would go to Elation characters are more on the rare side, but still do definitely work for a majority of the cast. Sustain specifically, this is even easier, of course, but at the same time, it can be difficult just because the whole thing with sustains, I had a whole video on this talking about how sustains got out of hand. They have to do more than just sustain now. Like they have to either do really good damage or just have really good buffs and debuffs, or both. Like again, Hyacine on a team where there was enough AoE buffs can actually have her do really good damage output. If paired with the HP scaler specifically, also did have the max HP buff. And then when it came to Danang Permetatere, his shielding was also just insanely good, or is really good. It's not really gone anywhere, but he also has like the attack buff, the bondmate stuff, depending on the bondmate stats, can do really good damage himself. Like there's just a lot of stuff that goes into it. So with sustains, on one side they have to sustain good outside of Elation, which I really don't think is going to be a problem. I think any sustain released going forward is always going to have the ability to sustain really well. I really doubt they'll ever release a character that isn't able to sustain as well as Danang or Hyacine anymore, just because they would be like, what's the point? But they'd have to provide something that is beneficial outside of the Elation teams, because of course just on Elation teams they will provide their Elation skill, their speed, increasing the AHA instant speeds, their punchline generation, their ability to maybe even increase Elation. So they automatically will have some value because they can actually enable AHA instant to do something instead of the useless like balls bouncing around everywhere on a team that doesn't have any other Elation characters, so they will be having that. But they obviously would need to actually have something that benefits other characters outside of Elation teams, whether that just be general vulnerability, defense shred even, which, you know, is more on the rare side, but honestly characters like Nick so ridiculous to the point that I can honestly see it. Just some form of buffing that does work outside of Elation teams. Like if it's just specifically increasing Elation and then they're a good sustain, and then they add on to the fact that they increase punchline, then there's not really going to be much of a point to run them. So generally, when it comes to the sustain side of things, I do hope they make it a way where there's like buffs or debuffs that do work a good outside of Elation teams. Of course, mainly tailored towards Elation teams because that's just how it's going to be, but still works really good outside of it. And then briefly about DPS, this is like the whole I doubt it. DPSs, they're going to want the whole like get instant fast as possible, get as much punchline as you can, get the biggest increase to Elation, only Elation related buffs. That's why I really doubt it's going to be a case where they work outside of it, except like a similar case like Sparksy with Sparkle just because of the skill point generation. But even that, I can see that getting faded out just because of how Sparksy does work and how with the third Elation character is able to grant more thrill and a big amount of an increase of that. I'm pretty sure it goes to like 1 or 4 or something between having 2 or 3 Elation characters, which is just insane. I doubt there's going to be a main DPS that really functions well. At most, there will be a sustain that exists, such as like Wokwol maybe on like what are the later Elation DPS's teams. That's about what I expect, but with Elation, I doubt like they're going to make like a main DPS Elation that works purely outside of characters that are not Elation. Like, I doubt that. I think the whole like Elation skill stuff is way more important to them for their damage output, so that's why like I can't really talk about that. With support and sustain, there are genuinely some workarounds you can definitely get through that would be beneficial, but with DPS, I really just don't think you can do it. But anyway, that does bring this video to a close, talking about what I do hope for Elation. As you can really see, I'm just hoping that they are less path restrictive, at least on the support / sustain side. It's very doable. Again, they did it with Hyacinth for the most part. Unfortunately, with the rest of their remembrance characters, they didn't. Only really RMC had the other benefit to that, actually. So yeah, honestly, RMC is another example. RMC and Hyacinth, like the two perfect examples. A perfect sustain that can work outside of the remembrance teams, and then RMC able to work as a buffer outside of those teams. If they can go that route, I feel like it's going to be a lot more beneficial. Unfortunately for DPS, I think they're just going to be, you know, kind of just tailor-made for that. They don't really have much leeway for that. Anyway, comment down below what you think about Elation, and if you guys are also hoping this. I'm sure most people would generally hope for the Elation support / sustains being more universal, just because in case they have a character they like there and they don't want to get into Elation, they can at least pull them and have fun with them, rather than just being like, damn, if I pull them and then put them on like an existing team, it's like a big detriment. And so most people probably do hope in a way, shape, or form they can end up functioning good, just like RMC and Hyacinth did for Remembrance outside of their respective teams. But I do hope you found this video helpful or enjoyable. Dropping a like would be greatly appreciated if you did. If you're new to the channel or haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe and turn on the bell for future videos like this, along with all the tips of style content. And I'll see you later. Peace out.